And so today we are welcoming back Allyson Cote and Todd Thomas of Ocean State Shields. They spoke a few weeks ago about some of the things they're doing in relation to the COVID crisis and how they're bringing new materials and new technologies to support our clean, healthy environment and keeping us safe. So thanks so much for coming back, and so we can dive a little deeper. Allyson, I will pass it over to you.
Oh, pass it over to me first. Wow. Okay. Thank you, Avi. Okay. Well, good morning, and thank you all for inviting us back. We definitely appreciate it. And as we know, I'm joined here by my co-founder, Todd Thomas, and we are two of the founding members of Ocean State Shields. So we kind of came out of nowhere. As I know many people know, I think it might have been just about one of the fastest launches in Rhode Island startup history. It took less than 2 weeks to get the company off the ground. And we did it really in response to COVID-19 and everything that was going on. And we wanted to bring something new to the table. Quickly about me, my background is I am a longtime entrepreneur in Rhode Island. My last company, I was actually the co-founder of Modernova. And that work I'm super proud of. And as you know, Meg and her team, that we worked to save women globally, but I'd always kind of wanted to bring my efforts back home, back to Rhode Island. So when this happened, being a public health crisis, it just made sense. Todd actually has a huge background as one of the leaders and one of the pioneers in the makers movement, in the maker space. And he and I had worked together on a few different projects over the past, it's almost like a decade now. It's crazy. Yeah, it was just about a decade. And when this happened, we just kind of put our collective heads together and said, you know what, we wanted to do something about this. And we were lucky enough to actually have a connection and an established relationship. And this is kind of the key point with SD Labs, which is a Connecticut-based company that has developed this line of truly kind of innovative, non-toxic, antimicrobial surface adherent treatments. And Todd can speak to it much better than I can. But we went to the founder of that company. We presented our idea for something we thought would really be unique, something that we could do to make a difference here. And much to our surprise, he actually let us run with it. So here we are. And I guess at this point, Avi, should I share my screen so you guys can see what we're talking about?
Sounds great.
All right, perfect. Okay. So what is the goal? And the goal obviously is, I know we're kind of, we're edging towards phase 3 of reopening, even though we all know this is a marathon. It is certainly not a sprint. And it's safe to assume and safe to say COVID is really not going anywhere anytime soon. So let's see if I can jump down, let's say forward. All right. So I know I don't mean to give everyone a history lesson, and Todd, feel free to correct me on this, but obviously, in the United States, we've had a few pandemics over the years. This certainly isn't the first, but in 2020 with COVID-19, it escalated at such a rapid pace that obviously the only natural response, unfortunately for most of us, especially in Rhode Island, was to go on lockdown and quarantine. I think we're all still kind of reeling from the effects there. So our mission, and kind of what we were thinking about, we wanted to become the exclusive partner and innovator with SD Labs. And we wanted to also be able to offer a really highly curated and customizable list of barrier protections, PPE, and ultimately an entire interior formulation program that we could bring in that would allow for disinfecting and treating entire interior office spaces. And the whole goal obviously was to help keep Rhode Island open. Todd, do you want to jump in on any point? I don't mean to quarterback this whole thing. You certainly have quite a bit to say.
So one of the things I actually wanted to mention was with my background in the manufacturing incubation side, and I'm also the president of Tinker RI, our state's nonprofit manufacturing incubator. So I'm used to working in team fashion with other companies. So we've actually been stirring up the pot here with some local fabricators and suppliers here in Rhode Island. So this is Rhode Island businesses working together. In addition to sort of our office and restaurant products, we've actually just finished developing a line of bus shields for school buses, for shuttle buses, transit system, and things like that. So we're actually working with local marine upholstery and fabric companies. We have a DOT approved material that is manufactured here in Rhode Island as well. So this is actually something that surprised me. I didn't even know we had this company, but in digging around, so this is actually, well, because right now, anybody who knows anything about doing plexiglass right now, it's in really short supply because everybody needs it to be creating, customer employee barriers and things like that. So one of the problems is there's this hugely limited supply of this material. A lot of it's made overseas. In terms of then, looking at alternates, we started looking with the marine industry, and that was actually a great thing because these materials are flexible. They can be sewn, they can be cut very, very easily, which has great impacts when you're talking about like in a school bus where you don't want a hard surface that can shatter. You actually want something soft and can take an impact if it needs to. So these are the things that we've been working on as well. But a big part of what we're also trying to do is work with these local suppliers and vendors to keep as much of this business in the state, not only help us open safely, but then also help our local economy.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about our partners. And you can see they are featured rather prominently here. First and foremost, obviously, SD Labs. They are making all of this possible. We're kind of the creative power behind the product lines that we roll out, and really building the business model. But without them, and giving us, the exclusive ability to be able to do this in Rhode Island and Mass, we would really just be another protective barrier company. And then also we want to give a huge shout out to John Kevorkian, the team over at Sprout. John has opened up his doors to us. And just been an enormous supporter. As you know, they actually just did a whole new build out. They've got some brand new office space there, which we are actually very proud to call home. We have a showroom opening up in a couple of weeks. So these are the folks that we're working with. We're also working with other groups, like as Todd mentioned, North Sales and Laird and Warwick. We're working with Office Depot. But really the folks who are the major cogs in the wheel for us are SD Labs and Sprout. So how can we actually help you? How can we help businesses? How can we help people protecting their homes, protecting their families, keeping everybody healthy? The first iteration of the company, and we've evolved pretty rapidly into something that goes far beyond just the panels that I know that we originally thought were going to be our kind of our flagship product. That's really no longer the case, but we do have them, and that is important, where you can get custom sized pre-treated polycarbonate panels. And then Todd, given his background in architecture, and this is something that, I was remiss in not putting in the presentation, is that if you contact us, Todd has graciously agreed that he will do consulting, and he will come out or meet with you and do a consultation looking at your space to figure out what is not only the most effective way to protect your employees and your customers and ultimately yourself and help keep your business open, but we want to do it as cost effectively as possible. This is not a business in Rhode Island where we're looking to take advantage. We're certainly not looking to price gouge anybody. So we're trying to keep it as affordable as humanly possible, because we know that Rhode Island took a huge hit with COVID. We know that many businesses sadly are not going to survive this. And if they do, it could be months before they're able to really bounce back. So some of the things that we're doing, we also have, and I'll be able to show, I don't know if you guys can still see me or if you're looking at the slides, but we actually are going to be offering product kits so that people will be able to treat their office spaces, their high touch surfaces, and something that we wanted to talk about, which we thought was actually important, is the return on investment for the products. And Todd, I know you've done a tremendous amount of work on that, so maybe you can kind of just hit the highlights on the dance card for that.
Sure. So I think one of the biggest things in terms of the ROI is if you think about all this cleaning that we have to do now in order to keep spaces safe, keep people safe, that's a lot of labor. It's also a lot of material. There's a lot of potentially toxic chemicals being put out into the environment. So one of the advantages of the SD products is this what they call clean and protect, where it's a two-step process where we disinfect and then we put on the protective coating. The protective coating helps prevent microorganism growth basically on the surface once you've cleaned it and then applied the protective barrier. This barrier can last anywhere between 30 to 90 days for the customer applied product. And then if we do the professional installation with electrostatic spray equipment, it can last up to a year on surfaces. So this can really have a major impact on companies' bottom lines in terms of the amount of cleaning you have to go through. Now, if you're a restaurant or a salon or something like that, you still need to hit those high touch areas regularly in between customers. It's not like at a restaurant, you're not going to wipe down the table in between customers. But what it does allow, though, is to reduce the amount of that heavy deep clean you have to do constantly. And it can also reduce the amount of toxic and nasty chemicals that you're using constantly. And so from the ROI point of view, just labor alone is a massive bit, and then the product. And especially when we're talking about the disinfectants and things like that, the quality disinfectants are expensive. So anything we can do to reduce the amount of volume of material, the labor and all that, that's right there.
Exactly. That's perfect. And one of the things, we also want to mention is, again, kind of bringing it back to the fact that we want, not only do we want to help keep our clients' doors open, also our partners. So we have partnered with a couple of commercial cleaning companies that are also going to be able to offer the service in addition to what they do to their clients. And we're able to do kind of one-on-one. So if a company were to contact us and say, we'd love to do SD Pro, which is through the electrostatic sprayer, and that lasts for up to a year, we would, given on kind of a needs analysis to see, do they currently have a crew in place? Are they able to prep the area before the team comes in? We would naturally refer it to a local company. So we're really doing everything we can to kind of keep revenue flowing and keep people safe so that Rhode Island can stay open and that we can kind of continue into phase 3 and not backtrack. I know that things are looking a little sketchy right now, even though Rhode Island actually is one of the only states that is showing a decline in COVID cases, as we all know. But we don't want to get too comfortable with that because I think it's safe to say that, again, these things aren't going to go away overnight. So we need to make sure that we're working as hard as we can and trying to be as innovative as we can in protecting our businesses and our families and our livelihoods. So ultimately, the next step for anybody who might be interested in learning more is you need to connect with us. You can come check us out at Sprout. You can book an appointment for a consultation online. You can email us and definitely visit the website and take a look at what we have. We are able to do custom orders for just about anything. I know that Todd mentioned it, but the products themselves can be applied to virtually almost any surface with very few exceptions and offer the same level of protection. So at this point, I think we can stop sharing. At least for that part, I can bounce back in and see. So some of the things that you can see.
So I'm going to put out a quick point here, Allyson, too. So one of the things that separates SD Labs product from a few other folks. So there's at least one other company in Rhode Island right now doing a protective barrier with a chemically similar product, but they only offer the service where they do it themselves. There's no consumer applicable product line that they offer. The SD Lab team has created both the professional product as well as what Allyson's holding, which is the consumer applied. So this actually allows you two different options. You can have the full professional system installed in your place, and that can be done every 6 to 12 months. Or even actually in addition to that, for those high touch point areas like the doorknobs, the phone handles, things like that are going to get a lot of wear and tear on them and constantly touching, you can then on a monthly or every 1 to 3 months use this customer kit where you can do it yourself. So you're not having to bring in somebody. So again, this is one of those things right now where we see these sanitizing companies going in on a monthly basis into restaurants. And while this is great for sanitation and peace of mind and things like that, that's still a huge cost monthly that your restaurant or your salon or other businesses are incurring. Whereas if you can do some of this in-house, this is a really viable option for you. It's literally a spray bottle of product, and it's very easy to apply. Basically a microfiber cloth. And this is actually one of those things where less is more. You really want a super thin coating, so you don't want to be slathering the stuff all over the place in order for it to work properly. So this is actually becomes very affordable for businesses.
Can you talk a little more about the technology or the chemical composition of?
Yes.
It's for me, it's hard.
He's so excited you asked.
I'm trying to really understand, how is this theoretically different than sanitizer? Why doesn't it already exist in the market? Or is it some kind of liquid enamel that then, gets soaked into surfaces?
Okay, so I can give you the quick rundown. So the base technology, by the way, is almost 50 years old. It was invented by Dow, and it's a silane-based product and ammonium quat. So if you ever look at ingredient labels and things like that, you'll see this in a lot of industrial disinfectants and other products like this in different formulations. So the magic of how this happens is SD Labs has basically improved the Dow recipe over the years, and they've got it to the point where I'm going to simplify the chemistry a little bit, but basically there's a covalent bond reaction that happens. So at the molecular level, when you apply this product very thinly, and this is the key, the thin coating on surfaces, you have a molecular bond to pretty much any surface out there. There's only a couple of plastics where it doesn't really stick to, but otherwise everything else, it has this molecular bond. And if you think about a pin cushion, right? So instead of your non-pinchy parts of the pin cushion sticking out, this is like all your pins are reversed. You've glued all your pins to your cushion with all the sharp pointy bits sticking out. So you have all these prickers now that are on a surface. And when you have your microorganism, bacteria, mold, viruses, things like that, any of these sort of single or very simple cellular organisms, they get punctured. It's like popping a balloon. So the way that it works is it does a physical destruction method rather than a chemical. So there's no what they call cytal action. So a bactericide or a viricide, those use a chemical process to leach some sort of toxic agent into an organism and kill it that way. This basically just slices and dices the microorganisms. Because it's also bonded to the surface, it's not, this stuff basically isn't just free floating out in the environment. And it's also does not promote like resistance. So your bacteria, molds, and things like that don't develop a chemical resistance to the product over time. So this is one of the neat things about it. It's actually a green product as well. This actually helps you qualify for, say, LEED building maintenance plans because it is a non-toxic. It's safe for animals, safe for humans, it's safe for food surfaces. Pretty much the caveat is, you apply it and once it's dry, it meets all these requirements. There are a few limitations. One thing, if you think about a cutting board with some meat juices running across it, anything that comes in contact with the surface has that sanitizing action, but obviously liquid that's on top of that that's running over it isn't all going to get treated, if you will, because it's about the contact surface. So this isn't a product that you're going to go using on cutting boards and things like that in a kitchen. What this is really designed for is the doorknobs, the phones, the keyboards, the countertops, all these other surfaces that you might come in contact with sort of on a daily basis. You mentioned, like a nail polish or like an epoxy paint, that actually kind of is what it is on a very, very nano level. And this is part of what SD Labs innovation has. Dow invented this product years and years and years ago, and it's a great product, but it was a hard time getting it to stick to things. So this is where SD Labs has done their innovation, where they've engineered the process and the paint, if you will, so that it is clear It doesn't cause yellowing or cause reactions with surfaces. It's super thin, and it doesn't affect the surfaces that it's put on. About the only thing you might notice would be, say, if you got like a silk scarf, if you were to coat like silk or like a velour or something like that that's got a nap to it, you'll notice a slight stiffening of it, because it's kind of like putting hairspray on it, if you think of it that way. Otherwise, you're not really going to notice it. So couch upholstery, bus chairs, things like that, all these sort of things. It's a great coating, goes on it, doesn't affect anything. It's inert once it's dried. So, and in terms of the market, I'm going to put this last little bit in here. So one of the reasons why it really hasn't caught on a lot in the marketplace is because this isn't a product like Lysol that you use every day, right? It's not like something where you're going to go through gallons of the stuff. So from a marketing perspective, this is not a high volume product. This is like the 10-year light bulb, where it's a great product, but people aren't necessarily going to market this thing because you're not going and buying these things in droves. So,
Right.
And it doesn't get wiped off by cleaning a surface. Like, it's not water soluble.
Nope. Once it's bonded, the only method of getting it off is to physically wear it away. So you can't even use like a solvent or something like that. So because of its nanostructure, it's very small. The reason why it's like human safe, for example, is your outer layer of skin, we're gonna be a little gross here, is made up of dead cells. So it doesn't affect you because you've got kind of an armor plating, if you will, of dead skin cells. So it doesn't affect you. So yeah, the product basically only wears away, which is why they give it roughly a year's time frame for average surfaces. For high wear areas, yeah, you're going to have to apply it more often, but it's kind of like if you think about your front door to your house, where does it get worn the most? Right around the doorknob. So, you're going to probably touch up your house paint every couple of years. And in our case, these high wear areas, you want to hit more often to have the effectiveness.
Aren't you glad you asked, Avi?
Thank you.
He is a virtual font of knowledge on this. He is probably, his expertise probably rivals Frank's at this point. But so our takeaway from that, my main one is my plan to, for my entire velour wardrobe has apparently gone right out the window. And two, some of the things that we're also thinking about, moving forward is we are continuing to kind of bat around different ideas, and some of the things are going to be a little bit smaller scale. We're not necessarily looking to to do the interior of every single space, but something that we think might be kind of a cool idea, and we're going to be testing it out, is we actually wanted to do kind of a sleeve that would be treated for people's debit cards, for people's licenses, because let's face it, when you go to the store, every time you slide that card in, unfortunately, it's filthy.
Yeah.
So these are small things. These are small changes that we're going to be working on, that we're going to do quickly. We're going to be able to do a pretty good volume of them, and they're going to be super affordable. So even though, it's not something that people think about every day, thankfully, and at least Todd, Todd is thinking about nothing but this right now. We're going to be rolling out some super cool things, but if anyone has any ideas, if there's something that they would like to see, if there's something that we haven't thought of yet, absolutely get a hold of us. If you want a custom product, if you're looking, for something that's really different or something that's unique for your business, some of the cool ideas that we've heard about with some of the polycarbonate panels, one of the clients we're going to be working with, and we are going to be releasing the names of everyone that we're working with. We're just kind of finishing up a lot of the contracts. Is they want the panels to reflect their business aesthetic. They want them to be cool. So some of the things that we can do are actually kind of screen printing on the polycarbonate panels. So you can have local artists. You can have different ways to design the products. It doesn't have to be boring. I mean, this is really, quite honestly, it sucked badly enough. It doesn't need to continue to suck. So if you're going to protect yourself, you may as well have a little fun while you're doing it. And even though, this is really rooted in science, we want it to be fun. We want it to be kind of the most positive spin that you can have trying to keep your doors open and keep your employees and your customers healthy.
So
And your family.
I'm gonna bust in here real quick. As Toonie had a couple of
Why
good
are you
questions.
busting in on me?
Yep, I know. So Toonie asked about the buttons on like ATM machines and the pin pads at the food stores. Yes, this is actually a perfect coating for those sorts of things. One of the things I noticed, by the way, was every time I go into CVS, there's some poor person wearing the red shirt, literally running around after me, spritzing every shelf I've touched. And then I also noticed that the way they have the plastic shields at the countertop prevents them from coming out to clean, easily cleaning the pin pad. So the checkout person has to run around the counter every time in between customers and spray the pin pad with some Lysol, and then they go back behind the counter. That's kind of a ridiculous process. So Toonie, yes, great question, and it's perfect for that.
That is a great question. Yeah, our essential workers, quite honestly, in the markets have been put through enough. I echo that sentiment. I was in a local market yesterday, and they really look like they would have preferred to have been drawn and quartered than have to clean that belt one more time. So that's a great point, Todd. And by the way, everyone, this is delicious if you're into that type of thing.
So two other quick points here too. I'm going to bump in here, talk over Allyson for a second. So one of the things is in terms of like partnerships and things. If you are a manufacturer of products here in Rhode Island, if you're a supplier, vendor, things like that, these are areas where we can partner up with you guys and pre-apply product to stuff before it goes out your doors. We can help you set up that process. It can be very affordable, especially on an industrial scale. If you can set up like a fogging area where you can coat things. I know that this is our lovely Office Direct partner here. That's going to be a big selling point there. The other thing too, again, is in terms of us being able to help you out in the bigger picture scheme, because we have a wide variety of talents in our company. We've also got some scientists from Roger Williams on our team as well. So when you look at your space, it's also things like, what's your airflow? Do you have ceiling fans? What's your layout? And these are areas where we can also help in these areas to sort of figure out what is the best way to keep people safe, customers, but also your employees. Your employees should honestly be people's #1 priorities, because if they don't feel comfortable showing up, you don't have a business if they don't show up. The same thing if they get sick. And you lose your employees, how do you stay open? So that really should be kind of a critical aspect there.
Correct me if I'm wrong here, and here I am talking over you now. How do you like it? Was there a study done recently that's actually, and I know we've talked about this, especially with John here over at Sprout, where in addition to filtration, air conditioning systems seem to be particularly prone to this type of organism, and that there were some concerns that might actually be problematic.
Well, okay, so it's not necessarily that the air conditioning itself is causes something worse, but it's actually the airflow and the air handling systems. And so there actually have been some studies over the last few months here where they've actually shown direct transmission vectors in office spaces, including open office plan areas, restaurants, banquet halls, and things like that. And it all is coming down to, from what they can tell, is the airflow through the space. And so ventilation, proper ventilation is key. Thinking about things like maybe dialing down the fan speed on your air handler, or putting in a better filter. So this is where just simply buying some HEPA filters to filter out air as it goes through the system. Certainly, our product can be used to spray filters and spray ducts, but you don't have to use that. There's also some common sense, sort of low-hanging fruit, like not using ceiling fans. Right now, ceiling fans could literally be deadly. This isn't just, standing up on a ladder and putting your head in the middle of one here. This is like, you can be putting up barriers in between people at a restaurant, and then your ceiling fan basically just makes it all moot. So
as we head into the summer, that's a real lot of good news. So hopefully we might be able to help people with that too, obviously with your expertise on that.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, a lot of the stuff is some fairly common sense stuff if you sort of think about the layout, and it might be redirecting vents, turning off ceiling fans, seeing how you can introduce more fresh air into a space, in a safe manner. And then some of it's going to be, telling your customers, hey, we really can't keep this down at 67 degrees in the summertime with the AC, because we really have to get more fresh air in, and we have to lower the speed on our fans and those sorts of things where, everybody's expectations have got to modify a little bit given the global crisis that we're in.
Right. Okay. Well, I think we don't want to overstay our welcome, Lexi, or Tuni. So are there any other questions or anything that maybe anyone thinks we might not have been clear on?
So my name is Bob Vetramile. I'd love to ask a question, but first, Allyson and Todd, congratulations on finding an innovative approach to helping to solve a really huge problem and building a business around that locally. That's just awesome. That's what we need more of in Rhode Island. So on many levels, congratulations and thank you. So a pretty simple question. Once your substance is on a surface, does it reduce the effect of a spray that then goes on it to prevent COVID from spreading?
No.
No, okay. So why isn't this being deployed en masse? The other day I'm at a stoplight and the public works truck comes up and a guy gets out and he sprays the cross buttons on every corner of the street. I'm like, all right, how many times does he do that a day? And
Okay.
how incredibly inefficient and effective is that? As opposed to spraying, doing a dose of your spray and then periodically put the disinfectant on top of it also. I mean, the applications are everywhere, I realize.
So
what's it take to create?
I give you the short reason, right?
Okay.
It comes down to regulatory and semantics issues. So the SD products internationally in many countries is considered and approved as a full disinfectant. In the US, because of how the EPA regulates products and the process you have to go through to get the approvals, which is literally could be up to a decade to get approvals the way the process goes. It is not approved as what they would call a contact disinfectant. So the EPA considers this a pesticide, as it does bleach and Lysol and things like that. So the EPA does not differentiate in that respect. So even though it has foreign approvals, we have all the science that shows it does these things, you cannot legally in the US label it a viricide or a bactericide or things like that. So therefore, people, I guess, don't think about it in that manner. And that is a problem in terms of sort of the marketing for the product, where you have to be very careful. What this does, what we're allowed to say by the EPA is that it protects the surface. Right, so the surface coating is
that the main ingredient is EPA approved.
Yep. All this, and again, we've got all the science behind it. The science, and again, this is with Dow Chemicals going back almost 50 years. There are tons of studies out there that show the effectiveness of the product, but because of the regulatory bits. Now, SD Labs is in the process of emergency authorization to get that labeling. It's not there yet.
But the good news is, hopefully it's going to be very, very soon. However, some of the, to answer your question as far as being deployed on mass scale, there, as Todd mentioned, there are many countries, South Korea, Singapore, who are using this for basically almost a universal deployment across their countries, their airports, their public transportation, their public housing. And right now, actually, even though it's probably, well, it's not necessarily top secret, but we can't give you the exact location, in New York State, that's all I'm going to say there, this actually is being deployed rather generously as part of a study that's being done. So it is something that is being used in the US, and it's just, I think it had a little bit of a stumble out of the gate, as Todd mentioned, only because it is still in or midway through the regulatory process. But given the fact that we really are in the middle of an enormous public health crisis, kind of the likes of which hasn't been seen since 1918, when we think about it, this is going to be sped up and gotten across the finish line much more quickly. So but do not let that dissuade anyone's belief in the efficacy and what this product line and what protection it can offer.
So it's a matter of the packaging, the claims. You can claim that it protects a surface, but you cannot claim that it helps protect those that come in contact with the surface.
Exactly.
For the moment.
So we are not allowed to say there's a health claim because of the regulatory purposes, right? But you go to Brazil, you go to Singapore, you go to Korea, and again, we're not talking backwards nations either. These are actually very high, highly respected. Singapore, for example, a very clean country, very, very modern. And if you've been to Singapore or dealt with them with business-wise, they are a very highly technical country. They've just treated their entire 3,800 bus national fleet, their transit system. They just treated their entire subway system. There is articles on it all over the world in world press talking about it. So it's definitely getting deployment. One of the funny things is, and I kind of think this is a little bit hilarious, is that this is an American product, right? This is made in America. Made in Connecticut. Right, being deployed in China. So rather than something being made in bulk in China and being sent to the U.S., this is a great example of the reverse.
The reverse
method here.
Have you begun to deploy this to colleges and universities in preparation for spring opening, and many colleges and universities that are trying to get or are preparing to have their athletes to begin training?
Yes.
Yeah.
we actually have right here. Roger Williams. We are working with them right now on their shuttle fleet and their public safety vehicles that transport students, and we are working, talking now with facilities, and we're actually begun the process of reaching out to RIDE and also all the other local colleges, facilities directors. So we've initiated.
I think we're gonna have a very busy summer.
Great. So
that's a good thing. That's a good thing, because we're gonna have to get this done before they attempt to reopen.
Yeah. So if you guys want to get in touch with me when this is over, and if I can facilitate anything through PC, we'd love to see them open back up as soon as possible. So I can get back over there.
Oh, you're wonderful. Thank you, William.
All right. So I've got to run, but just want to let the good job, and we'll talk soon. Ping me on LinkedIn if you like. Okay. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
My question just was I had a couple questions, obviously, I always do. Are you signed up as a supplier with the Supplier program?
We are.
Okay, good. Because they can obviously help connect you, which they probably already have. And then I'm listening and running a bunch of stuff at the same time. I think you answered the question. So the lab is going through the process of being certified?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's being expedited pretty ferociously because of what's happening. Unfortunately, it took a pandemic to get them motivated to be able to get the approval, but it's happening now.
Yeah, and again, to be clear, the product already is EPA certified. So the materials it uses, the product, all this. So again, this becomes a language issue here and semantics. So anything that this coating is applied to is considered a treated article under EPA regulations. Again, the limitation is you can't make a health claim right now because of the vetting process that you go through, and they're in the final stages of the vetting process for this. But from a safety point of view, it is a regulated product. It is approved. They have all the, we have all the SDS sheets on it, all that sort of information, and it is a non-toxic product, and it's a green product. So again, all these sort of things are, we have going for it.
It's cool. It's a great product. And we're doing some cool stuff with it, so that's important.
Do you recall what the independent lab results had for average kill time of, say, 98% effective for things like SARS and other generations of coronavirus?
Not for the coronavirus specifically, but their average time, again, this is with the independent studies, this third-party reviews, where they did actually a study versus copper product.
Yeah,
as well as
familiar
just
with
the
that.
normal kill times. And it's somewhere in the 2 to 10 minute range, depending on what the organism is. The only thing that does not work, by the way, just the science-wise, and this is just another quick little science lesson. There are a few organisms that are basically considered a hard shell organism. So this is where mold spores are an example, and there's also a couple of biological, bad germs that you don't want to get that have a hard shell, like a cyst type structure to them, where they're armored, basically is what it comes down to. So anything like that that has an armored shell and is going to resist getting punctured, again, like a pin with a balloon, it's not going to be effective on that. So there's a couple of organisms that is not effective on, but otherwise, so the designation they're going for with the EPA is a hospital grade disinfectant. So that is actually a very specific grade of disinfectant,
has been
the
used
highest
in
level.
different hospitals. This actually has been used in different hospitals.
Yep.
So
So by the way, the type of thing that this is, all right, the Dow, again, basic formulation has been used for years in tracheotomy tubes and other surgical devices that get left in a body for a certain period of time to prevent bacterial and other organism growth while it's in human contact. So again, this technology it's not new, right? It's demonstrated safe, it's demonstrated to be effective. There's just different formulations of this. Again, with the big thing with SD Labs, what their innovation is the ability for the coating to stick to just about anything out there and for it to be wear resistant. Those are the two big innovations that they bring to the table there. So again, we're also more than happy to again send you any of this information if you want to dive into it like I have. I mean, you can get buried in the science on it, but it's really pretty cool.
I don't think anyone wants to dive into it that much.
But it's pretty cool stuff, and again, there's a lot of advantage to this, which you don't realize it. Again, like I said, surgical tools have been coated with this stuff for years, but we aren't coating our strawberry boxes, that you have at the food store. And one of the things that this can help with is simply like food waste. Mold, as an example, is something that is endemic, right? It's everywhere. You can't really get rid of it all the time. It's out in the wild. So when you have fresh strawberries and you pick up at Shaw's Market and you wonder why, geez, it's summertime, my strawberries got all gross in like 3 days. It's not even necessarily that the strawberries themselves went bad, but that the cardboard box you got them at the store had some mold on it, and now in your cool, damp fridge or in your house in the damp summer weather here, that allowed the mold to grow, which then transferred to strawberries, which then turned them all gross. So this sort of product application to food containers like that actually can help with spoilage. So there's a lot more sort of opportunity to utilize this technology out there, basically in better ways.